I had just seen the Whitney Biennial in New York a few weeks earlier. I then visited Maastricht for tefaf in May. I then traveled to Venice for the Biennale in early June. And just a week after that, I was in Switzerland for Art Basel. And this, mind you, was when the art world, if you can believe it or not, moved at a more leisurely pace. There are now so many art fairs and biennials across the world that it's almost impossible to keep fully abreast of the market for my client. And that client in 1993 was when I was the first art advisor for Hogan Jago. Yes, the software entrepreneur, yes. Like most collectors, Mr. Jago didn't have the time or extensive knowledge needed to closely follow the art market. So he sent me around the world to utilize my expertise in art history to give him recommendations for the most exquisite art created. Art dealers will give their most favored collectors first choice of the most important artists' most important work. And a well-connected art advisor might help their collector to the front of that queue. In 1993, Mr. Jago was not that sort of art collector, and I was not that sort of art advisor. So we needed to make do with less credibility than the saatchis and broads of the world. Mr. Jago was considered a new collector then, so blue-chip dealers brushed him aside onto 3-year-long waiting lists. Perhaps he'd never truly be first in line on that list. I was relatively new as well. I had been an assistant curator at the Smart Museum of Art in Chicago for 2 years, after earning my M.A. in Modern and Contemporary Art History at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. My few connections did not bring us to Matthew Barney, who had won the Aperto Prize at the Venice Biennale that year. The Biennale is an endurance test, really, particularly when you are expected to wear heels, lest you make the wrong impression on the wrong person. There must have been more than 1,000 artworks on display. At that time, I didn't visit many of the country's main pavilions for more than my own enjoyment. I could recommend to Mr. Jago that he buy works from Louise Bourgeois, who showed in the U.S. pavilion, or Hans Haacke, who made a big splash with his Hitler-referencing destruction of the German pavilion, or Yayoi Kusama, whose dots and phalluses were finally welcomed inside of the Japanese pavilion. Artists like these enjoyed a select few pedigreed buyers. New money like Mr. Jago, however, need not apply. My job was made much more difficult, not necessarily because I didn't have the right connections, but because I actually had to be spectacular at my job. While some art advisors merely need to know what is already known, I actually needed expertise in gauging who'd be important in the future. What was a good investment? Who could we purchase for next to nothing with a major reward in the future? So I spent much of my time at the Aperto. As I walked through the cordery, I felt a deflating sensation. Much of that year's work felt rather ephemeral to me. On my first day, I briskly walked through the exhibition. I popped my head into Erkenbold Fuchs's barrier of sandbags to see that they protected nothing more than another sandbag on a plinth. I didn't have time for this. I wasn't taking a closer look. I stopped for a moment to watch Celia Merode's Beach Day, the pleasant beach scene, and it may have made an impression on me. It probably did, but I moved on very quickly, knowing that Mr. Jago wasn't buying anything that needed to be plugged in or otherwise assembled. By the end of the day, I questioned myself. Was I really supposed to be doing this job? These other curators from around the world had chosen this up-and-coming art to exhibit, but I didn't see whatever they saw. So sitting with a glass of red wine at the edge of the Grand Canal, I considered calling Mr. Jago to say that I was a fraud, and I wasted his money, and if he had any sense really, he'd make me pay for my own ticket back home to New York. After a second glass of wine, I decided that this was very much my fate. I'd wake up in the morning and order a taxi back to Venezia Marco Polo, and I'd return home. But after my third glass of wine, I considered and reconsidered my time in Venice, what I had seen, what I had refused to see, and what I refused to see that everybody else, it seemed, was blind to as well. By my fourth glass of wine, I knew how Mr. Jago could one day be, maybe not a saatchi or a broad, but perhaps somebody more shrewd, like the Vogels. The next day, I decided to stop being defeatist, at least for a few hours, and marched right back into the Biennale. Walking through the corridor, the sandbags still bored me, but I decided to stop and watch as many video and film works as I could from start to finish. I truly loved Merode's piece where she did cartwheels between the World Trade Center towers. There was a playfulness and fun to that work that was largely absent from many of the other pieces in the Whitney Biennial, which was absent from the Aperto as well. So I stopped to see if she'd captured the same sense of mirth in her film in Venice. Time-based works require so much more attention, and some of the few collectors who do acquire films are petrified of ever playing them, fearing that older films will just disintegrate on the reel. And there is a scrumptious story about how a pair of major collectors accidentally recorded the nightly news over a video by Dara Birnbaum. So yes, films have always been a difficult sell for collectors, but therein lies the deal. You could buy many film and video works for a few $1,000s. Photography had been much maligned as well, but after the pictures generation with sensations like Cindy Sherman in the early 80s, it was a highly respected art form by the 90s. I knew, at least I think I knew, that film and video would achieve that status as well. We just needed time. And I just needed to convince myself that I could convince Mr. Jago. I watched Merode's beach scene, and I must have dismissed the work as being unsaleable so quickly the day before that I hadn't noticed the two boxes standing between the screen and myself. I wonder how many other visitors slipped past without noticing them, giving the work the few seconds that anyone usually gives to a typical painting. I walked to the side of the screen to see if I missed anything with these boxes. I kept my eye on them as I stepped closer to the big screen. I saw the light of the projectors shining inside of the boxes. I turned to the big screen, and I saw what the beachgoers actually reacted to. The couple having sex, the woman digging a watery grave. I saw an artist expanding the ways that a medium could be used. Mr. Jago wasn't convinced. When I called him, he said, "Is it really going to be worth anything in the future?" I told him established film artists are getting 6 figures for some of their works now. So he asked, then why aren't any of my friends buying films? Mr. Jago's friends were a veritable who's who of American millionaires and soon-to-be billionaires. I told him film is an underappreciated art form. Maybe your friends aren't the ones we should be watching. We should be more worried about the kramlichs. He said, who the hell are the kramlichs? Pamela and Richard Kramlich. They're a San Francisco couple who are monopolizing time-based media, such as video. They've already bought most of the best work since the late 80s. There are rumors that they'll open their own museum of video art. They'll buy everything and have a monopoly on time-based works for the rest of their lives, unless somebody stops them. I wasn't sure if the Kramlichs really planned to open their own museum, no. The rumor was just that, a rumor. I merely knew that Mr. Jago was like many American businessmen, competitive to a fault, willing to discard principles if it meant being the best. Mr. Jago needed a shortcut into being the best in the art world, but I couldn't risk offending him by saying he needed a shortcut. I only sold the grand outcome. If he began buying video pieces, he'd dominate this niche of the art world in a matter of years. Perhaps months, really. Not only that, I said. If we buy films by a brilliant young artist like Celia Merode, the art world will notice. From what I understand, she doesn't yet have a patron of your caliber. If you buy her films, her dealer Patrick Bowman will likely bump you up on the list for works by Eagleheart and other artists that you've waited on for years. No, I don't enjoy selling an artwork in such a way, but I knew it would make him ask, "This'll get me to Eagleheart?" Almost certainly. I was not certain. But, I went on, that's only a fringe benefit in this scenario because you'll be at the forefront of an important medium. It's like buying IBM stock in 1915. I knew nothing about software, but I thought that might pique his interest. And he said, "You must really believe in this." "I do." I did. I think. "I especially believe in Celia Merode." I did. I think. So he said, "I mean, your commission on a film that only costs a couple $1,000 will be spare change." Mr. Jago only thought in dollar signs. So I said, "That's how much I believe in it." And I did. I think I did. I think I did, yes. He thought for a moment and said, "Well, talk to Patrick and buy up as many of these Merode things as you can. And when you go to Basel next week, buy all of the videos that will appreciate in a few years." He stopped. Then he said, "By the way, if you see the Kramlichs while you're in Europe, tell them this." I waited for him to continue. "Tell them that Hogan Jago doesn't fuck around."